The kingdom of Luminaris floated high above the mortal world, a shimmering realm of crystal spires and endless twilight. It was a place where time seemed to stand still, and its inhabitants, celestial beings with glowing eyes and wings made of light, were revered as gods among their own kind. Among them lived Seraphina, a young woman whose very existence was both celebrated and scorned. Seraphina had been born under unusual circumstances. Her mother, Queen Elisara, ruler of Luminaris, had fallen in love with a human man during one of her rare visits to Earth centuries ago. Their union had produced Seraphina, a child who carried traits from both worlds. She possessed the radiant beauty of her celestial kin, with hair that shimmered like starlight and skin kissed by an otherworldly glow. But she also bore signs of her humanity, brown eyes instead of golden ones, and wings that were smaller and less luminous than those of purebloods. These differences marked her as an outsider in the eyes of many. From a young age, Seraphina learned to endure whispers behind closed doors. Courtiers muttered about her impure blood, while others openly questioned whether she should even be allowed near the throne. Despite this, Seraphina tried her best to prove herself worthy. She trained tirelessly in combat, mastered ancient spells, and studied the history of Luminaris with unmatched dedication. Yet no matter how hard she worked, there was always someone ready to remind her that she didn't belong. One fateful evening, everything changed. A group of jealous courtiers, led by Lord Maltharis, a cunning nobleman with ambitions for power, accused Seraphina of plotting against the queen. They claimed they had intercepted messages between her and rebels seeking to overthrow the monarchy. Though these accusations were baseless, fear spread quickly through the palace halls. Even the queen's closest advisors began to doubt Seraphina's loyalty. Queen Elisara knew the truth. Her daughter would never betray her. But as protests erupted across the kingdom and calls for justice grew louder, Elisara faced an impossible choice: to protect Seraphina and perhaps save her life. The queen ordered her banishment to Earth. It was a cruel sentence, but it was better than execution. With tears streaming down her face, Elisara summoned Seraphina to the royal chambers. "My beloved child," Elisara said, her voice trembling, "you must leave this place. Not because I believe you guilty, but because staying here will only bring harm to you." Seraphina stared at her mother, shock giving way to anger. "How can you send me away? This is my home." "It is not your home anymore," Elisara replied softly. "But know this, you are stronger than anyone realizes. Perhaps on Earth, you will find what we could not give you here." Before Seraphina could protest further, guards escorted her to the Celestial Gate, a swirling portal that connected Luminaris to Earth. As she stepped through, the weight of her exile pressed heavily upon her heart. Behind her, the familiar glow of her homeland faded into darkness. Ahead lay an unknown world filled with uncertainty. For the first time in her life, Seraphina felt truly alone. But as the portal sealed shut behind her, she vowed to survive. Not just for herself, but to prove to everyone back in Luminaris that being different wasn't something to fear. Little did she know, her journey was only beginning. Life in the forest had begun to feel almost normal for Seraphina. She and Caleb spent their days exploring, learning, and sharing quiet moments by the fire. Yet beneath the surface of this fragile peace, an unease lingered, a sense that her past was catching up with her. At first, it was subtle. The air grew heavier, charged with electricity even on calm days. Strange storms rolled in without warning, dark clouds swirling ominously overhead before vanishing just as quickly. Animals became restless, fleeing deeper into the woods as though sensing danger. Seraphina noticed these changes but tried to ignore them, hoping they were merely coincidences. However, one night, as she and Caleb sat outside the cabin gazing at the stars, a chilling whisper echoed through the trees. It wasn't loud enough for Caleb to hear, but Seraphina froze, her heart pounding. The voice, faint yet unmistakable, called her name in a language only Celestials understood. "They're here," she whispered, clutching her chest. "They found me." Caleb frowned, his brow furrowing with concern. Who? What are you talking about? Before she could answer, the ground trembled violently, knocking them both off balance. A blinding flash of light erupted nearby, followed by the sound of cracking branches. Out of the shadows emerged three figures cloaked in shimmering armor, their golden eyes glowing like lanterns in the darkness. They were Luminarian scouts sent to retrieve, or eliminate, Seraphina. Princess Seraphina, one of them said coldly, stepping forward. You have been summoned back to Luminaris. Come willingly, or we will take you by force. Caleb instinctively moved in front of her, gripping a hunting knife tightly. Who are you people? Stay back. The scout sneered, raising a hand to summon a crackling orb of energy. This does not concern you, mortal. Step aside. Fear surged through Seraphina, but anger quickly followed. She wouldn't let anyone hurt Caleb, not because of her. Summoning what little celestial power she had regained, she stepped forward, her dim wings unfurling behind her. Though smaller and less radiant than those of her kin, they still glowed faintly in the moonlight. I won't go back, she declared, her voice trembling but resolute. And if you want me, you'll have to fight for it. The scouts attacked without hesitation, unleashing bursts of energy that shattered nearby trees and scorched the earth. Caleb dove out of the way, narrowly avoiding a blast that left a smoking crater where he'd stood moments earlier. Desperate to protect him, Seraphina unleashed her own powers, creating barriers of light to deflect the attacks. But it wasn't enough. Her strength wavered under the relentless assault. Seeing her struggle, Caleb grabbed a fallen branch and hurled it at one of the scouts, distracting them long enough for Seraphina to counterattack. With a surge of determination, she channeled all her energy into a single strike, sending a wave of light crashing into her enemies. Two of the scouts fell, temporarily stunned, while the third retreated into the shadows. Breathing heavily, Seraphina turned to check on Caleb. He lay on the ground, clutching his side where a stray bolt of energy had grazed him. Blood seeped through his fingers, but he managed a weak smile. You okay? He asked, wincing. Tears welled in Seraphina's eyes as she knelt beside him. I'm so sorry. This is my fault. No, Caleb insisted, his voice firm despite his pain. You saved me. Now tell me what's going on. For the first time, Seraphina told him everything. The truth about Luminaris, her banishment, and why her presence put him in danger. As she spoke, Caleb listened intently, his expression shifting from shock to resolve. If they're coming after you, then you can't stay here, he said finally. But I won't let you face them alone. Seraphina shook her head. I can't ask you to do that. You've already risked too much. You didn't ask, Caleb replied. I'm choosing to help. Besides, I think you're tougher than you realize. Whatever's waiting for you, you'll handle it. His words gave her courage, but also clarity. Staying on Earth would only endanger Caleb further. Reluctantly, she made a decision. I need to go back, to confront them. But I promise, if I survive, I'll come back to you. Though heartbroken, Caleb nodded. Then make sure you keep that promise. As dawn broke over the horizon, Seraphina prepared to leave, knowing her journey was far from over. The bond she shared with Caleb had given her strength, but now she would need every ounce of it to face what awaited her in Luminaris. As weeks passed, Seraphina began to adapt to life on Earth with Caleb's guidance. Each day brought new lessons and challenges, but also moments of unexpected joy. Caleb taught her how to track animals, set traps, and identify edible plants in the forest. He showed her how to carve tools from wood and navigate by the position of the sun. For someone who had spent her entire life surrounded by celestial magic, these simple, practical skills felt strangely empowering. In return, Seraphina shared glimpses of her celestial heritage. One evening, as they sat by the fire, she demonstrated her ability to manipulate light. With a flick of her wrist, she created glowing orbs that hovered above their heads, casting soft illumination across the cabin. Caleb watched in awe, his eyes wide with wonder. "That's incredible," he murmured. "You're like something out of a dream." Seraphina smiled faintly but quickly looked away. Sharing pieces of herself made her feel vulnerable, especially since she still hadn't told him the full truth about where, or what, she truly was. Despite this, Caleb never pushed her for answers. His patience and kindness only deepened the bond growing between them. Their connection wasn't just built on survival, it was rooted in understanding. Caleb listened when Seraphina spoke of feeling like an outsider in her own world, nodding sympathetically as if he understood rejection all too well. In turn, Seraphina noticed scars on Caleb's hands and arms, evidence of a hard life lived alone. When she asked about them one night, he hesitated before admitting that he'd chosen solitude after losing his family in a tragic accident years ago. "I guess we're both running from something," he said quietly, staring into the flames. "Maybe that's why I found you when I did." The comment lingered in the air, unspoken emotions swirling between them. For Seraphina, Caleb's presence filled a void she hadn't realized existed. On Luminaris, she had always been judged for her differences. Here, among the trees and rivers of Earth, she felt seen, not as a half-breed or an outcast, but as herself. One afternoon, while exploring deeper into the forest, they stumbled upon something extraordinary: ancient ruins partially buried beneath moss and roots. The stones were engraved with intricate carvings depicting winged figures standing alongside humans. Some images showed celestials teaching humans how to harness energy, while others depicted battles against shadowy creatures. "This is impossible," Seraphina whispered, tracing her fingers over the weathered designs. "How could humans know about us?" Caleb shrugged, though his expression betrayed curiosity. "Maybe your people visited Earth once. These ruins look older than anything I've ever seen." Seraphina's mind raced. The carvings hinted at a forgotten alliance, a time when humans and celestials worked together. But if such harmony had existed, why did her kind now view humans as inferior? And why had no one told her about this history? As they continued examining the site, Caleb noticed something odd. Whenever Seraphina touched the stones, faint pulses of light radiated outward, illuminating hidden symbols beneath the surface. It was as though the ruins responded to her presence, recognizing her celestial bloodline. "You're part of this," Caleb said, his voice tinged with awe. "Whatever happened here, it's connected to you." Seraphina didn't reply. She felt torn between excitement and fear. If the ruins held answers, they might also reveal truths she wasn't ready to face. Still, one thing was certain: her arrival on Earth wasn't random. Something greater was at play, pulling threads through time and space to bring her here, to Caleb. That night, as they walked back to the cabin under a canopy of stars, Caleb glanced at her and smiled. "You know, I think you're exactly where you're supposed to be." Seraphina didn't respond, but for the first time, she allowed herself to believe him. As Queen of Luminaris, Seraphina faced a monumental task: rebuilding trust not only within her own realm, but also between Luminaris and Earth. The scars left by centuries of division ran deep, but Seraphina was determined to heal them. Her first act as ruler was to declare an end to the isolationist policies that had kept Celestials separated from humans for so long. She stood before her people in the Grand Hall, her voice steady yet filled with emotion. "We cannot continue living as though we are superior," she announced. "Our strength lies not in separating ourselves, but in uniting with those who share our destiny, humans. Together, we can restore balance to both worlds." Her words stirred mixed reactions. Some cheered, inspired by her vision, while others grumbled about change coming too quickly. But Seraphina knew she couldn't afford hesitation, not when shadows still lingered at the edges of reality, threatening to consume everything if left unchecked. To solidify this new alliance, Seraphina established sanctuaries on Earth where celestial energy could safely coexist with humanity. These sites became bridges between realms, places where humans and celestials worked side by side to protect the fragile harmony they had rediscovered. Caleb played a crucial role in these efforts. Serafina invited him to serve as one of Earth's ambassadors, guiding others through the challenges of understanding celestial ways. Their reunion was bittersweet. When Caleb stepped through the portal into Luminaris for the first time, he marveled at its beauty. The floating islands bathed in perpetual twilight, the crystalline spires shimmering like stars. Yet his eyes softened most when they met Serafina's. Though dressed in regal robes and adorned with symbols of her authority, she was still the same woman he'd found lost and broken in the forest. "You've changed," Caleb said, smiling faintly. "You look untouchable." Serafina shook her head, taking his hand. "I'm still me, just stronger because of you." Their bond remained unshaken despite the demands of their roles. While Caleb traveled between Earth and Luminaris, helping establish ties between their peoples, Serafina governed with wisdom beyond her years. She listened to advisors, consulted ancient texts, and sought counsel from Lady Silvera, who had become a trusted mentor. Yet, no matter how busy she was, she always made time for Caleb whenever he visited. One evening, as they stood together on a balcony overlooking Luminaris' glowing expanse, Caleb asked the question that had been weighing on his mind. "Do you ever regret coming back here, leaving Earth behind?" Serafina hesitated, then shook her head. "Not anymore. This is my home now, but only because I carry pieces of Earth with me. You taught me what it means to belong somewhere, to fight for something bigger than myself." Caleb smiled, squeezing her hand. "And you showed me that even the impossible is worth believing in." Over time, peace began to take root. Humans learned to harness celestial energy responsibly, using it to heal barren lands and purify polluted waters. Celestials, in turn, embraced human ingenuity and resilience, finding inspiration in their determination. Together, they forged a future neither world could have imagined alone. But perhaps the greatest symbol of hope was Serafina herself, a half-human, half-celestial queen who embodied unity. On days when doubts crept in, she reminded herself of the promise she'd made to Caleb, to return to him someday. And though her duties often kept her tied to Luminaris, she never forgot the man who had given her the courage to embrace her true self. The story ends with Serafina standing on the balcony once more, gazing at the horizon where Earth and Luminaris met in the sky. Behind her, the sounds of laughter and celebration echoed through the palace halls, a testament to the healing she had brought. For the first time in centuries, two worlds were no longer divided. They were connected, not just by magic or treaties, but by love, trust, and shared dreams. And Serafina knew, deep in her heart, that she had finally found where she belonged. Determined to uncover the truth about her heritage and the ruins they had discovered, Serafina returned to the ancient site with Caleb before her departure. The carvings on the stones seemed to pulse faintly under her touch, as if calling out to her celestial bloodline. Each symbol told a story of unity, betrayal, and forgotten alliances. As she traced her fingers over the engravings, fragments of memories not her own flooded her mind. She saw visions of a time long past, humans and celestials working side by side, their combined powers protecting both realms from an encroaching darkness. Humans acted as guardians, channeling celestial energy into the earth to maintain balance. In return, celestials shared their knowledge and magic, creating a harmonious partnership. But then came the fracture, a betrayal that shattered trust between the two races. Celestials accused humans of misusing their power, while humans claimed their celestial allies abandoned them when they needed help most. War erupted, ending with the sealing of the portal between worlds. Caleb watched silently as Serafina's eyes filled with tears. "What are you seeing?" he asked gently. "It's our history," she replied, her voice trembling. "Humans and celestials were once allies. We protected each other, but something went wrong. A lie, maybe. And now, I think I'm part of whatever's supposed to fix it." Her words sent a shiver down Caleb's spine. Fix it? How? I don't know yet, Serafina admitted. But these ruins, they're tied to me. My blood activates them. Maybe my existence isn't just some mistake. Maybe I'm meant to bridge the gap between our worlds. As they delved deeper into the ruins, they found a hidden chamber beneath the moss-covered stones. Inside, a pedestal held an artifact glowing faintly with celestial light, a crystal orb etched with runes identical to those on the walls. When Serafina touched it, the orb flared to life, projecting images into the air. Scenes unfolded before them. Celestial armies marching across scorched landscapes, human villages burning, and finally, a lone figure standing at the center of chaos, a half-breed child, glowing brighter than any star. That's me, Serafina whispered, staring at the projection in disbelief. Caleb stepped closer, his jaw tightening. Looks like your destiny was written a long time ago. The vision shifted again, showing glimpses of what might come. Storms raging across both Earth and Luminaris, shadowy creatures emerging from cracks in reality, and Serafina herself standing at the heart of it all, wielding a power greater than anything either world had seen. But there was a cost. Her choice would determine whether peace could be restored or if both realms would fall into ruin. This is insane, Caleb muttered, running a hand through his hair. You're supposed to save *2 worlds, alone. I won't be alone, Serafina said firmly, meeting his gaze. I'll have you, with me, even if we're apart. Though the weight of her responsibility terrified her, Serafina felt a spark of resolve ignite within her chest. She wasn't just a rejected princess or a lost wanderer anymore. She was a key, a bridge between two broken worlds. For the first time, she understood why she'd been born different. Her human compassion and celestial strength weren't flaws. They were gifts meant to heal old wounds. But embracing this role wouldn't be easy. Returning to Luminaris meant facing enemies who saw her as a threat, and possibly losing Caleb forever. Still, she knew she couldn't turn away. If she did, both Earth and Luminaris would suffer. We need to prepare, she said, turning back to Caleb. If I'm going to confront my kin, I'll need to understand every piece of this puzzle. Teach me more about Earth, about humanity. Their courage, their resilience. Maybe that's what I've been missing all along. Caleb nodded, determination replacing fear in his eyes. Together, they vowed to fight for a future neither of them fully understood, but one worth believing in. As night fell, Serafina stood beside the glowing orb, its light reflecting in her eyes. Somewhere deep inside, she felt the stirrings of a power greater than herself awakening. Whatever lay ahead, she was ready to face it, for Caleb, for Earth, and for the fractured legacy of her people. The moment Serafina stepped through the celestial gate, she found herself plummeting toward Earth. The air was thick and heavy, pulling at her wings as though trying to crush them. Her descent was chaotic. Branches whipped past her face, and the ground rushed up faster than she could comprehend. With a loud thud, she landed in a dense forest, her body slamming into soft moss and leaves. Pain shot through her limbs, but it wasn't just physical. The ache of abandonment weighed heavier on her heart. For days, Serafina wandered aimlessly, struggling to adjust to this strange new world. On Luminaris, gravity had been light, almost non-existent, allowing her to glide effortlessly. Here, every step felt like dragging chains. Hunger gnawed at her stomach, something she'd never experienced before. Celestials didn't need food or water. They drew sustenance from the energy around them, but Earth offered no such luxury. She tried eating berries she found hanging from bushes, but some made her sick, leaving her weaker than before. Cold nights were the worst. Without her celestial powers fully functioning, she couldn't summon warmth. Shivering under makeshift shelters of branches and leaves, Serafina wondered if banishment was truly better than death. Her glowing skin dimmed with each passing day, blending more with the shadows of the forest. For the first time, she understood what it meant to feel powerless. One evening, As rain poured down relentlessly, Serafina collapsed near a stream. She was too exhausted to move, too weak to care anymore. That's when she heard it, a faint rustling nearby. At first, she thought it might be an animal, but then a voice called out, "Hey, are you all right?" Through blurred vision, Serafina saw a figure crouching over her. It was a man, dressed in rugged clothing, his dark hair plastered to his forehead by the rain. His name was Caleb, a wilderness guide who lived alone deep in the forest. He had been tracking deer when he stumbled upon her. "You don't look so good," Caleb said cautiously, studying her pale face and tattered clothes. "Come on, let's get you somewhere dry." Too weak to resist, Serafina allowed him to help her stand. Leaning heavily on him, she followed as he led her to a small cabin tucked away among the trees. Inside, a fire crackled warmly in the hearth, casting flickering light across wooden walls lined with tools and maps. Caleb handed her a blanket and a bowl of soup. "Eat," he urged gently. "You'll feel better." At first, Serafina hesitated. The taste of human food was foreign, even unpleasant, but hunger won over pride, and she slowly ate spoonful after spoonful. As strength returned to her body, curiosity sparked in Caleb's eyes. "So, who are you?" he asked finally, breaking the silence. "I've never seen anyone like you around here." Serafina froze, unsure how much to reveal. Could she trust this stranger? Would he believe her if she told him the truth? Instead of answering directly, she simply said, "I'm lost." Caleb nodded thoughtfully. "Well, you're safe now. We'll figure things out together." Over the next few days, Caleb tended to Serafina's wounds and taught her basic survival skills. He showed her which plants were edible, how to start a fire without magic, and how to navigate using the stars. In return, Serafina shared fragments of her story, not the whole truth, but enough to hint at her otherworldly origins. One night, as they sat by the fire, Caleb noticed something extraordinary. When Serafina spoke passionately about her homeland, tiny sparks danced around her fingertips. Though startled, he didn't recoil. Instead, he smiled. "You're not from around here, are you?" he said softly. Serafina looked away, guilt twisting inside her. "No," she admitted, "but I can't go back." Caleb placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Then stay. You're welcome here, for as long as you need." For the first time since leaving Luminaris, Serafina felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe Earth wasn't so cruel after all. Serafina's defiance in the throne room marked the beginning of a dangerous new chapter. Her boldness had earned her a temporary reprieve, but Queen Elisera knew that proving Serafina's worth would require more than words. It demanded action. To silence her critics and solidify her claim as a leader, Serafina was subjected to the Asterisk Trials of Ascension Asterisk, a series of tests designed to evaluate the strength, wisdom, and purity of any celestial seeking power. The first trial took place in the Obsidian Abyss, a cavernous void where shadows whispered lies meant to unravel one's sanity. As Serafina stepped inside, the air grew cold and voices began to echo around her, some familiar, others alien. They taunted her with doubts she'd carried since childhood. "You're not strong enough. Your human blood makes you weak. No one will ever accept you." For a moment, Serafina faltered, tears streaming down her face as memories of rejection flooded her mind. But then she heard Caleb's voice, not physically present, but etched into her heart. He believed in her. Earth believed in her. Drawing on that faith, she clenched her fists and shouted into the darkness, "I am stronger than your lies." The shadows recoiled, dissolving into nothingness. She emerged victorious, though shaken, earning murmurs of approval from some members of the court who witnessed her triumph. Next came the Trial of Flames, held atop Mount Solace, where rivers of molten energy surged like veins across the landscape. Here, Serafina faced physical challenges that tested her endurance and combat skills. Armed with only the wooden dagger Caleb had given her, she battled constructs forged from fire and light. manifestations of her inner fears and insecurities. Each strike against these enemies felt like fighting pieces of herself: her anger, her guilt, her longing for acceptance. At one point, exhaustion nearly overwhelmed her. Her wings burned with exertion, and her body screamed for rest. But she remembered Caleb teaching her resilience, the way he pushed through pain because giving up wasn't an option. With a final surge of determination, she shattered the last construct, collapsing to her knees as cheers erupted from distant spectators. The final trial was the most personal, the mirror of truth. This ancient artifact forced participants to confront their deepest vulnerabilities and desires. When Seraphina gazed into its surface, she didn't see her reflection, but two possible futures. In one, she stood alone on Luminaris' throne, powerful yet isolated, having sacrificed everything, including Caleb, for duty. In the other, she stood hand in hand with Caleb on Earth, free but unable to prevent the collapse of both worlds. Tears streamed down her face as she reached out toward the second image, yearning for the life she craved. But something stopped her. A realization. Her purpose wasn't just about choosing happiness. It was about creating a future where no one had to choose between love and responsibility. Summoning all her strength, she shattered the mirror, refusing to be bound by either fate. Her actions stunned the court. Many saw her decision as reckless, but others recognized it as an act of profound courage. Among them was Lady Silvera, a trusted advisor who revealed shocking evidence during the trials. Lord Maltharis had orchestrated the betrayal centuries ago, severing ties between humans and celestials to consolidate his own power. His treachery had poisoned relations between the realms ever since. Enraged, Maltharis attempted to flee but was apprehended by royal guards. Facing justice at last, he lashed out, summoning dark forces to attack the throne room. Chaos erupted as shadowy creatures poured in, threatening everyone inside. Queen Elisere shielded her people, using her remaining strength to hold back the onslaught. Seeing her mother's sacrifice, Seraphina unleashed her full power for the first time. A radiant burst of light that purified the darkness. The effort drained her completely, leaving her unconscious as the battle subsided. When Seraphina awoke, she learned the devastating truth. Queen Elisere had perished defending her. Grief threatened to consume her, but amidst the sorrow came clarity. Her mother's death wasn't in vain. It paved the way for a new era. And now, as the newly crowned Queen of Luminaris, Seraphina vowed to honor her legacy by uniting both worlds. She glanced at the wooden carving Caleb had given her, clutching it tightly. One day, she promised herself she'd return to him. Until then, her work was far from over. With the knowledge of her destiny burning in her heart, Seraphina prepared to leave Earth and return to Luminaris. Caleb helped her gather supplies for the journey. Dried food, medicinal herbs, and a small dagger he insisted she take for protection. Though neither of them voiced it, the air between them was heavy with unspoken emotions. Both knew this might be their final goodbye. "I still don't like this," Caleb said as they stood at the edge of the forest, near the spot where the celestial gate had first brought her to Earth. "You shouldn't have to face them alone." Seraphina forced a smile, though her chest ached at the thought of leaving him behind. "I won't truly be alone. Everything you've taught me, all your strength and courage, it'll stay with me. That's how I'll survive." Caleb sighed but nodded. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small wooden carving, a bird with its wings spread wide. "Take this. It's supposed to remind you that no matter what happens, you can always fly back to where you belong." Tears welled in Seraphina's eyes as she accepted the gift. She wanted to tell him that he was her home now, not Luminaris. But words failed her. Instead, she hugged him tightly, memorizing the warmth of his embrace before stepping away. Summoning the last remnants of her celestial power, Seraphina reopened the portal to Luminaris. The shimmering gateway appeared before them, casting an ethereal glow over the forest. Taking one last look at Caleb, she stepped through, leaving Earth. and him behind. On the other side, Seraphina found herself in the crystalline halls of Luminaris once more. But the realm felt different now. Colder, darker. Shadows loomed where light used to dance, and the air carried a tension that made her skin prickle. Almost immediately, she sensed the presence of watchers hidden among the spires, their golden eyes tracking her every move. Before she could gather her bearings, a group of royal guards descended upon her, their weapons drawn. Their leader, Captain Valen, sneered as he approached. "So the traitor returns. Did you think we wouldn't find you?" "I'm not a traitor," Seraphina shot back, standing tall despite the fear clawing at her insides. "I came back because I won't run anymore. If you want me, you'll have to listen to what I have to say." Her boldness surprised Egan herself, but she refused to cower. After everything she'd endured on Earth, she wasn't about to let these people break her spirit again. Word of her return spread quickly, reaching Queen Elisara's ears. To Seraphina's shock, her mother summoned her to the throne room, not to punish her, but to hear her out. As Seraphina entered the grand chamber, she saw the toll recent events had taken on the queen. Elisara looked frail, her once brilliant aura dimmed by stress and sorrow. "Why have you returned?" the queen asked, her voice tinged with both hope and dread. "To stop this madness," Seraphina replied, her tone steady. "The accusations against me are lies crafted by those who fear change. But there's something bigger at stake here. Earth and Luminaris are connected. Our fates intertwined. If we don't restore balance, both worlds will fall." Elisara listened intently as Seraphina recounted her discoveries in the ancient ruins, the forgotten alliance, the betrayal, and the prophecy hinting at her role in healing the rift. For the first time, the queen seemed to see her daughter not as a burden, but as a beacon of hope. But not everyone shared her vision. Lord Maltheris, the architect of Seraphina's banishment, stormed into the throne room, flanked by his loyalists. "Enough of this nonsense," he bellowed. "She's nothing but a half-breed trying to deceive us." Maltheris lunged toward Seraphina, his blade glinting menacingly. Before anyone could react, Seraphina unleashed a burst of energy, knocking him backward. Her powers surged stronger than ever before, fueled by her resolve and the lessons she'd learned from Caleb. "You may doubt me," she declared, her voice echoing through the chamber, "but I won't let you destroy either world. Not while I still draw breath." As chaos erupted around her, Seraphina realized the battle ahead would test her in ways she couldn't yet imagine. Yet deep down, she knew one thing for certain. She was ready to fight. For her mother, for Caleb, and for the future she believed in.